The Arizona sun beat down mercilessly on Detective Rhonda Mercer as she ducked under the yellow crime scene tape. The suburban Phoenix neighborhood had gone eerily quiet, news of the murder spreading like wildfire despite the early hour. It was June 17, 2008, a Tuesday that would haunt her for years to come. "What do we have?" she asked, addressing the uniformed officer who met her at the doorway of the modest single-story home. Male victim, early 30s. Neighbor called it in after hearing what she described as a commotion around midnight. Said she would have checked sooner, but thought it might be a domestic dispute and didn't want to get involved. The officer's face was pale, his voice steady but strained. It's bad in there, detective." Mercer had been on homicide detail for 12 years, but nothing prepared her for the scene in the bathroom. The metallic scent of blood hit her first, so thick she could taste it, followed by the sticky resistance beneath her shoe covers as she stepped across the threshold. Travis Caldwell, a 30-year-old physical therapist according to his driver's license, lay partially slumped against the glass shower door. Water, tinged crimson, still pooled around the drain. His throat had been slit with such force that bone was visible. More than 24 stab wounds punctured his torso, and a single gunshot wound to his right temple appeared to be the final insult. "Jesus," she whispered. This wasn't just murder. This was overkill. The forensic technician looked up from where he was photographing blood spatter patterns. Killer switched weapons mid-attack. Started with the knife, ended with the gun. Rarely see that level of escalation. "Rage killing," said Mercer, pulling latex gloves tighter over her wrists. "Someone really hated this guy. Or loved him too much," her partner, Detective James Cortez, said from the doorway. At 48, he had a decade on Mercer and the weary eyes of someone who'd seen it all and wished he hadn't. "Check this out." He held up an evidence bag containing a sleek black camera. "Found it on the kitchen counter. Not dusty, so it wasn't sitting there long." Mercer frowned. "Photographer at a murder scene? That's a new one. Gets better. It's a high-end model, and there's a name etched on the bottom." Cortez flipped the bag to show her. Jenna Morris. The name meant nothing to Mercer then. By nightfall, it meant everything. The victim's mother collapsed into a chair at the precinct, her face swollen from crying. "I told him," Helen Caldwell whispered. "I told Travis that girl wasn't right." "You're referring to?" Mercer asked, though she already suspected. "Jenna Morris. His ex. They broke up 3 months ago, but she wouldn't leave him alone. Kept showing up places, calling at all hours." She pulled a tissue from her purse with trembling hands. "Travis was too nice to get a restraining order. Said she was just going through a rough time and would eventually move on." "Any specific incidents that concerned you?" Cortez asked, pen hovering over his notepad. Helen nodded vigorously. "Last month, he changed his locks. Found her inside his house when he got home from work. She had a key made somehow. Just sitting there in the dark." She shuddered. "Travis called me that night, really shaken up. Said she told him if he ever dated anyone else, she'd make sure he regretted it." Mercer and Cortez exchanged glances. "Do you know where we might find Jenna?" Mercer asked. "She has an apartment over by that art district downtown. Works at some coffee shop nearby." Helen's voice hardened. "That girl, she always had to document everything with that camera of hers. Said she was going to be a famous photographer someday. Used to take pictures of Travis sleeping. He told me it made him uncomfortable." The detectives thanked Helen and promised to keep her updated. In the hallway, Cortez sighed. "So our victim's obsessive ex-girlfriend happens to leave her prized camera at his murder scene. Either she's incredibly careless. Or she wanted us to find it," Cortez finished. "Let's pay Ms. Morris a visit." Jenna Morris lived in a converted industrial building with exposed brick and pipes. The kind of place that was purposefully underdone to look artistic. The manager let them into her unit after they showed their badges. The apartment was small but meticulously organized, except for the far wall, which was covered floor to ceiling with photographs of Travis Caldwell. Travis smiling at a restaurant. Travis asleep on a couch. Travis looking surprised as he opened his front door. Travis jogging in a park, clearly unaware he was being photographed. Christ, muttered Cortez. Mercer moved closer to the wall. Some of these look recent. And look, she pointed to a photo of Travis arguing with a blonde woman outside a restaurant. That's dated last week. She was stalking him, Cortez said flatly. They found Jenna at her workplace, Boheme Coffee, a trendy cafe where she was arranging pastries in a display case. At 27, she was strikingly beautiful, with long dark hair and intense eyes that gave the detectives an unsettling appraisal. Jenna Morris? Mercer asked, showing her badge. I'm Detective Mercer, this is Detective Cortez. We need to ask you some questions about Travis Caldwell. Something flickered in Jenna's eyes, recognition, then wariness. I haven't seen Travis in weeks, she said, her voice steady. We broke up. When was the last time you were at his house? Cortez asked. Months ago. When we were still together. She brushed her hands on her apron. What is this about? Mr. Caldwell was found murdered this morning, Mercer said bluntly, watching for a reaction. The color drained from Jenna's face. Her hand flew to her mouth. No, that can't be right. We found your camera at the scene, Cortez said. For a moment, genuine confusion crossed her features. My camera? That's impossible. She stopped abruptly, eyes darting to the side. It's what? Pressed Mercer. It's at home, Jenna finished, but the lie was transparent. We'd like you to come down to the station to answer some questions, Mercer said. It wasn't a request. At the precinct, Jenna maintained her composure. Yes, she and Travis had dated for nearly 2 years. No, the breakup wasn't her idea. Yes, she had been upset but had moved on. No, she hadn't been to his house recently. And no, she had no idea how her camera could have ended up there. Do you own a gun, Ms. Morris? Cortez asked. No, she answered quickly. Too quickly. We'll need to search your apartment and car, Mercer informed her. Don't you need a warrant for that? We're getting one as we speak, Cortez replied. But you could save us all some time and give us consent now. Jenna's facade finally cracked. I want a lawyer. The search of Jenna's apartment yielded a box of ammunition matching the caliber used to kill Travis, hidden in a hollowed-out book. Her car contained a plastic bag with bloody clothes stashed under the spare tire. The knife was never found. Confronted with this evidence, Jenna's story changed. I was there, but I didn't kill him, she insisted, her lawyer beside her looking increasingly concerned. I just wanted to talk. We argued. I left. Someone else must have come after me. But the forensic evidence told a different tale. Her fingerprints were on the shower door. The blood spatter on her clothes indicated close proximity during the stabbing. The gun, recovered from a dumpster 3 blocks from her apartment, had her prints all over it. Still, she maintained her innocence until they showed her what they'd found on her camera, a series of photos taken the night of the murder. Travis asleep in his bed. Travis waking up, startled. Travis backing away, fear in his eyes. The last image was particularly damning, a reflection in a mirror showing Jenna herself, camera in one hand, knife in the other. She broke down then, tears streaming down her face. You don't understand, she sobbed. He abused me for years. Controlled everything I did. When I finally got the courage to leave him, he started threatening me. Said he'd ruin my career, tell everyone I was crazy. Detective Mercer leaned forward. We've interviewed Travis's friends, family, and co-workers. Not one person described him as abusive or controlling. In fact, they all said the opposite, that you were the one who couldn't let go. Of course they'd say that. Jenna cried. He was careful. He was always careful. But her story kept shifting. First, she claimed Travis had attacked her that night. Then, that he had been planning to release intimate photos of her online. Finally, that he had threatened to kill her if she didn't come back to him. The prosecutors weren't buying it. Years passed before the case went to trial. Legal maneuvers, psychiatric evaluations, and a backlogged court system all contributed to the delay. By 2013, when proceedings finally began, the case had become infamous, featured on true crime shows and dissected by armchair detectives online. Jenna had cultivated a peculiar celebrity status. Her photographs, the artistic ones, not the stalker catalog, had been exhibited in galleries, framed as the work of a misunderstood woman pushed to the brink by an abusive partner. A small but vocal support group formed, insisting she was another victim of a justice system that didn't take domestic abuse seriously. Detective Mercer watched it all with growing discomfort. She'd investigated hundreds of domestic violence cases and knew the signs. Nothing in Travis Caldwell's history suggested he was an abuser. If anything, the evidence pointed to him being the victim of escalating harassment that ultimately cost him his life. The trial itself became a media circus. Jenna appeared each day in modest, tasteful outfits, her demeanor alternating between vulnerable victim and composed artist, depending on the day's testimony. She maintained eye contact with jurors when her defense painted Travis as controlling and manipulative, and looked down demurely when prosecutors described the brutality of the murder. The evidence is irrefutable, the prosecutor told the jury during closing arguments. This was not a crime of passion or self-defense. It was premeditated, brutally executed, and followed by calculated attempts to mislead investigators. Ms. Morris stalked Travis Caldwell for months after their breakup, violated his home repeatedly, and finally ended his life with shocking violence when she realized he was never coming back to her. The defense countered by portraying Jenna as a desperate woman who'd endured years of psychological torture. What drives someone to such extremes? Her lawyer asked rhetorically. The same thing that keeps victims returning to their abusers: fear, manipulation, and the systematic destruction of their self-worth. After a 7-week trial and 3 days of deliberation, the jury returned with their verdict: guilty of first-degree murder. Jenna showed no reaction as the judge sentenced her to life without parole. She maintained her empty gaze as officers led her from the courtroom. Outside, reporters swarmed around Detective Mercer. "Detective, do you believe justice was served today?" Mercer paused. 5 years had passed since that scorching June morning when she'd stepped into Travis Caldwell's bathroom. 5 years of watching a killer attempt to rewrite history, casting herself as the victim and her target as the villain. "I believe the evidence spoke for itself," she said finally. "But there's something that still haunts me about this case." "What's that?" asked a reporter, microphone thrust forward. "The photos on Jenna's camera. She wanted us to find them. She documented her own crime, step by step." Mercer shook her head. "In all my years as a detective, I've never seen a killer so determined to create a visual record of their actions. It's as if, in her mind, the murder was just another photo shoot, something to be composed, executed, and preserved." Later that evening, alone in her office, Mercer pulled out her case notes one last time. Something had never sat right with her, even after the conviction. Not doubt about Jenna's guilt, the evidence was overwhelming, but a nagging feeling that they hadn't uncovered the full truth. She reread Jenna's final statement to the court: "One day, everyone will see that I did what I had to do. The camera never lies, even when people do." Mercer turned to her computer and, on impulse, searched for Jenna's photography website, still active despite her incarceration. Scrolling through the galleries, she found mostly landscapes and artistic portraits, until she reached a collection simply titled "Him." The photos weren't of Travis, as she'd expected, but of another man. Older, well-dressed, with cold eyes that seemed to look through the camera rather than at it. In some shots, he was clearly unaware he was being photographed. In others, he stared directly into the lens with unsettling intensity. The final image in the series showed the man standing in what appeared to be Travis Caldwell's living room. The timestamp was 2 days before the murder. Mercer sat back, a chill running through her despite the warm night. Who was this man? Why had he been in Travis's home? And why had Jenna documented him too? 5 years after Travis Caldwell's brutal murder, with his killer behind bars for life, Detective Rhonda Mercer realized the case that had defined her career might not be closed after all. The camera never lies, Jenna had said. But it doesn't always tell the whole truth either. What secrets still remained in those carefully composed frames? What had Jenna been trying to preserve, or reveal, in her obsessive documentation? And most troublingly, had Travis Caldwell's murder been the end of the story, or merely one chapter in a darker narrative that was still unfolding? As night fell over Phoenix, these questions hung in the air, unanswered.